Good morning, dear students. A warm welcome to all of you for our today's digital revision session for the subject Science and Technology Section B. This is our second revision before the first online assessment. Let us have quickly a glance at both the chapters from Section B, Classification of Plants and Energy Flow in an Ecosystem. Let us begin with the revision for chapter number 6, Classification of Plants. We have studied in this chapter how kingdom Plantae is further divided into two subkingdoms, that is cryptogams and phanerogams. Cryptogams are further divided into three divisions, that is division Thallophyta, Bryophyta and Pteridophyta. Phanerogams are further categorized into gymnosperms and angiosperms further divided into dicotyledonous and monocotyledonous plants depending upon the number of cotyledons present in seeds. Now we will see the different principles, the basis for the classification of plants. The first is presence or absence of certain organs is the first criterion for the classification, the first principle for the classification of plants. Next is the presence or absence of separate conducting tissues for the conduction of water and food. You have studied in different divisions how the presence or absence of different conducting tissues like xylem and phloem are present or absent. This is the second step, next consideration for classification. Third is whether they are able to bear seeds or not. It is also an important principle for classification. And finally, plants are grouped depending upon the number of cotyledons which are present in the seeds. This is the basic, you can say, for classification. At the higher levels of plant classification, if you see, different characteristics are considered for classification. For example, depending upon the absence or presence of flowers, fruits and seeds, plants are classified as cryptogams or phanerogams. Depending upon whether the seeds are enclosed within a fruit or not, plants are further classified as gymnosperms and angiosperms. Angiosperms you have seen just now, they are further classified as monocots or dicots depending upon the number of cotyledons in the seeds. So these are the different steps which are followed for the classification of plants. So now let us move towards the classification of the first subdivision, cryptogams, into first division, that is division 1, Thallophyta. Now all the plants belonging to this division, they mainly grow in water. They are water growing plants. Now this group of plants which do not have specific parts like the root, stem, leaves, flowers, but they are autotrophic. Autotrophic means they can prepare their own food, autotrophs, due to the presence of chlorophyll. They are called as algae. So here the next characteristic is absence of specific parts like roots, stem, leaves and flowers. Now algae, just now I spoke about, they are called as algae. They show great variety, they show great diversity. They may be unicellular or multicellular, and they may be microscopic, that is which can be viewed only under the microscope, or they can be large in size. So examples of different algae are Spirogyra, Eulothrix, Alva, Sargassum, etc. This all examples of each division you have to study thoroughly for the first online assessment, because as I have told you, a question for MCQ will be Spirogyra belongs to division dash and the names of the divisions will be given. You have to select the correct option. So you have to study all the examples. Now some of this, if you see, they are found in fresh water and some are found in saline water. And if you see the structures, plants usually have a soft and fiber like body. Here if you have seen, Some great option is, you can say, that various types of fungi like yeast, which are used in the preparation of bread, and molds which do not have chlorophyll, absence of chlorophyll also, they are also included in this group. When you have studied about metals, non-metals, there also you have seen different exceptions, like if you say all the metals are in solid state except bromine, which is in a liquid state, so all these are exceptions. Similarly here, various fungi and like yeast, molds which do not have chlorophyll, they are also included in this division, Thallophyta. Next is second division of cryptogams, Bryophyta. Now this group of plants, that is bryophytes, they are called the amphibians of the plant kingdom. What do you mean by amphibia? Amphibians are the one which live on land also and take the support of water also. So why this group of plants are called amphibians? Because they grow in moist soil but need water for reproduction. So both the requirement of soil, that is land, as well as water for reproduction, hence they are called as amphibians. If you study about their structure, these plants are thalloid, multicellular and autotrophic. Now thalloid means an organism or a structure resembling a thallus. Multicellular, you know, more than one cell, and autotrophic means they can prepare their own food. They reproduce by the formation of spores. So reproduction by spore formation. Now the structure of plant body here is flat, ribbon-like, long, without true roots, stem and leaves. Instead of that, they have stem-like or leaf-like parts and root-like rhizoids. They do not have specific tissues for the conduction of food and water. In the basis of classification, that time we had seen the second step, the presence or absence of separate conducting tissues. So here you can see in division Bryophyta, they do not have specific tissues for the conduction of food and water. And different examples of plants belonging to this division are moss, that is Funaria, Marchantia, Anthosaurus, Rixia, etc. So all these examples, as I have told you, should be known by you. Here you can see the photographs, the diagrams of the different plants which belong to division Bryophyta. You can see here root-like rhizoids. You can see sporophyte, a capsule here. So here also you can clearly see the root-like rhizoids. Our next division is third division from cryptogams, that is Pteridophyta. Now plants from this group, if you see, the main unique characteristic here is they have well-developed roots, stem and leaves and separate tissues for conduction of food and water. This part was absent in the case of Bryophyta. Even you had seen over there that the structure of the plant body in bryophytes, it was without true root, stem and leaves, whereas in the case of Pteridophyta, these plants have well-developed roots, stem and leaves, and also they have separate tissues for the conduction of food and water, but they do not bear flowers and fruits. Second is, in the case of pteridophytes, they reproduce with the help of spores which are formed along the back or posterior surface of their leaves. So reproduction is with the help of spores. Now the different examples of plants which belong to Pteridophyta are Nephrolepis, that is fern, which you can see everywhere. It is an ornamental plant. Marsilia, Pteris, Adiantum, Equisetum, Selaginella, Lycopodium, etc. All these examples again and again I am telling you, you have to revise before your first online assessment. Reproduction asexually in the case of Pteridophyta is with the help of spore formation and sexually by zygote formation, and they all have a well-developed conducting system. Now after we finish with the subdivision cryptogams, we are going to move towards the next subdivision of subkingdom, you can say, of kingdom Plantae, that is phanerogams. Phanerogams, why they are known as phanerogams? Now plants which have special structures for reproduction and which produce the seeds, they are called as phanerogams. They are, if you can say, they are a subset of embryophytes or land plants. Why? Because they have special structures for reproduction and they also produce seeds. So you can say they are the seed bearing plants. In these plants, if you see, after the process of reproduction, seeds are formed which contain the embryo and the stored food. Stored food, why? Because during germination of the seed, the stored food is required for the initial growth of the embryo. And further, if you see, depending upon whether the seeds are enclosed in a fruit or not, phanerogams are classified into gymnosperms and angiosperms. Earlier in the basis of classification, we had seen at higher levels of classification, all these characteristics are taken into account, whether the plants bear seeds or not, whether they are monocots or dicots, whether seeds are enclosed in a fruit or not. So here also phanerogams are classified into gymnosperms and angiosperms depending upon whether the seeds are enclosed in a fruit or whether the seeds are naked. So the first division of phanerogams is gymnosperms. Now why the name gymnosperms, that we are going to see. The main characteristic of the plants, if you see, look at the plants, they are mostly evergreen, perennial and woody in nature. Their stems are without branches. You cannot see any branches here. You have seen the Christmas tree, Pyxia, which is known as the Christmas tree. It is without the branch and their leaves you can see forming a crown-like structure. So this is the main characteristic. Stems are without branches, leaves form a crown. And why the name gymnosperms? Because gymnos means naked and sperms here means seeds. The seeds are naked. That is, the plants do not have natural coverings. These plants do not form fruits and therefore they are called the gymnosperms. Now the unique characteristic for plants belonging to gymnosperms is that these plants, they bear both male and female flowers on different sporophylls of the same plants. And different examples of plants belonging to gymnosperms are Pyxia or the Christmas tree, which you have witnessed, you have seen, Cycas, Tuja or the Moorpankhi, Pinus, Deodar. These are all the different plants belonging to division gymnosperms. And the last division for phanerogams is angiosperms, exactly opposite of gymnosperms. These flowers, the flowers these plants bear, they are their reproductive organs. Flowers are the reproductive organs in the case of angiosperms. Flowers develop into fruits and seeds are formed within these fruits. Thus you can see that these seeds are covered. Hence they are called as angiosperms. Angios means cover, sperms means seeds, and hence I have told you exactly opposite of gymnosperms. Because in gymnosperms the seeds are naked without any natural covering, whereas in the case of angiosperms the seeds are covered and hence the name angiosperms. Now the plants whose seeds can be divided into equal halves or dicotyledons, they are called as dicotyledonous plants, and those whose seeds cannot be divided into equal parts are called as monocots or monocotyledonous plants. Now this is the largest and the most diverse group within the kingdom Plantae with about 3 lakhs of species. Why? Because all the fruits, grains, vegetables, trees, shrubs, etc. belong to this division angiosperms. They are the flowering plants and bear their seeds in the fruits. This is the main characteristic of division angiosperms. With this, we complete the revision for chapter number 6. If you see chapter number 6, you have to only study the characteristics of each and every division and the examples of plants which belong to that particular division. After that, we move towards the revision of next chapter, chapter number 7, energy flow in an ecosystem. Here the first topic is food chain. What is meant by a food chain? You all know that in the nature, in the ecosystem, there are the different categories of living organisms, that is the producers, consumers, saprotrophs and decomposers. And a definite sequence, if you see, interactions, they go on continuously between this producers, consumers and saprophytes, and definite sequence in the interactions between producers, consumers and saprophytes is called a food chain. Each chain, if you see, consists of 4, 5 or more links. Why a food chain is required? Because in a chain, the next organism, it gets its food, it obtains its food from the previous link, whereas it is fed upon by the next level in the chain. Means only the first level, that is the group of plants, they are autotrophs, they are the producers, rest all are dependent upon each other. If you see here an example of food chain, the sun is the important source of energy. Here you can see grass, the first link who can prepare their own food. Next link here in the food chain is grasshopper, who depends upon plants. The next is frog, who depends upon grasshopper. The next is snake, who depends upon this frog. The next is eagle. So here if you see in a food chain, the organism obtains its food from the previous level. At the same time, it is fed upon by the next level in the food chain. So this you can see in a linear manner, and it is called a food chain. When it is forming a intricate network type, it is called a food web. Means what? In a you can say in an ecosystem, it is not necessary that an organism is going to eat only one type of organism or one type of species. It is going to feed upon different organisms. At the same time, it will be eaten up by different organisms. If you take your own example, you are human beings, you can consume dal, rice, chapatis, vegetables, non-veg food. So different things you are going to consume. At the same time, if you are in the midst of the jungle, you can be consumed or eaten up by a tiger. You can be eaten up by a lion also. Similarly, an organism may be the prey for many other organisms. For example, an insect feeds upon the leaves of various plants, but the same insect is the prey for different animals like frog, wall lizard, birds, etc. So it is not necessary that one organism is going to eat only one type and will be fed upon by only one type. So here you can see a large network formation is seen in the ecosystem. So if this is to be shown in a figure, it will form an intricate web instead of a linear food chain, and such an intricate network is called a food web. While explanation, we had seen n number of examples of food web. You can see this small example here. These are the berries which are the producers. It can be eaten up by butterfly. It can be eaten up by this bird. It can be eaten up by grasshoppers. Frog can eat this butterfly. Snake can eat the butterfly. Means such a type of intricate network which is called a food web. Our next topic is energy pyramid. Now energy pyramid, you can see this example of a pyramid. Here, these are the various levels, and each level in the food chain, it is called a trophic level. Now, what is a trophic level? As we had seen during explanation, a trophic level is nothing but the step at which the organism obtains its food in the chain. Suppose it is the level of producers. After producers, you have this consumers, that is the first trophic level, or herbivores. This is the trophic level at which the organism is obtaining its food from the autotrophs. So that is the trophic level. If you see here, the amount of matter and energy gradually decreases from producers at the lowest level to the top consumers at the highest level. We had taken a very good example about the distribution of chocolates in the class, or any foodstuffs which when circulated by the peons, first child is getting it on the first bench. When it reaches the last bench, most of the foodstuffs in it has been consumed and very less amount reaches the next bench and towards the very, you can say, lowest amount at the last bench. We had taken up that example. Now energy transfer, if you see, it takes place at every or each trophic level. There are the different levels of energy exchange in the food chain. The initial quantity of energy, it goes on decreasing. As I have told you, if 60 chocolates are there with the first child on the first bench, the first child will take up 2 chocolates and it will pass to the next chocolate, means 58 will go. 58, the child will take suppose 1 chocolate. When it reaches the next bench, 57. So when it goes ahead, the chocolates go on decreasing. Similarly here, when the energy is being transferred from one level to the other, it goes on decreasing from the lowest level to the highest level, and this pattern of energy exchange in an ecosystem is called an energy pyramid. You can see a good example here. If grass is having 10,000 kilocalories of energy, all this 10,000 will not be passed on to the next, that is herbivores. This grass will use some of the energy for its own activities, and remaining will be transferred to the next level. What will happen after the death of these apex consumers? Their energy becomes available to the decomposers. Fungi and other microorganisms, as you know, they decompose the bodies of dead animals. Hence, they are called as decomposers. Why they do so? In the process of obtaining food from the remains of organisms, these decomposers convert them into simple carbon compounds. These substances easily mix with your air, water, soil, from where they are again absorbed by the plants and incorporated into the food chain. So here you can see energy transfer taking place at each trophic level. Then not only the amount of energy but the number of organisms also decreases from the lowest level to the highest level. And here you know the sun is the very important, most important source of energy in any ecosystem. The green plants or the autotrophs of the ecosystem, they store some amount of solar energy in the form of food. Before reaching the decomposers, this energy is passed on from one trophic level to the other. From the sun, who is taking the green plants, they are preparing the food. From the green plants, it was transferred to herbivores, then to the carnivores, then to the apex carnivore. So before it reaches the decomposers, this energy is passed on from one trophic level to the other. Decomposers, they dissipate. Dissipate means throw away some amount of energy in the form of heat, but no part of the energy it ever reaches the sun. It never returns to the sun, and hence such passage of energy is referred to as one-way transport. Even though the energy flow in an ecosystem is one way, the flow of nutrients, you will come to know here, biogeochemical cycle, the flow of nutrients in an ecosystem is cyclical. And this cyclical flow of nutrients within an ecosystem is called the biogeochemical cycle. Why? You all know that nutrients, they are necessary for the growth of living organisms, and they are continuously transferred from abiotic to the biotic factors, that is the non-living to the living, and from the living again to the non-living within an ecosystem. This cycle, if you see, it operates continuously through the medium of biosphere, which is formed by lithosphere, atmosphere and hydrosphere. And the recycling of the biological, that is living, geological and the chemical sources, different chemicals are also involved, of the nutrients in this process. It is a very complex process and it depends upon the level of energy transfer in the ecosystem. So here you can see that the flow of nutrients in an ecosystem is cyclic, even though the energy flow is one way. Now we are going to study the three cycles. The first one is the carbon cycle, then the oxygen cycle and the nitrogen cycle, which are extremely, you can say, important in the ecosystem. The first is carbon cycle. What do you mean by carbon cycle? The circulation and recycling of carbon from the atmosphere to the living organisms. See, from abiotic to the biotic, and after the death of living organisms, again back to the atmosphere is called the carbon cycle. It is one of the very important biogeochemical cycles. Here you can come to know the circulation from abiotic to biotic and from the biotic to the abiotic factors. Now, abiotic carbon atoms, they are circulated and recycled into the biotic form mainly through the process of photosynthesis and respiration. Hence, the carbon cycle is one of the important biogeochemical cycles because it involves the circulation of carbon. Plants, if you see, plants are autotrophs. They prepare their own food. How they prepare their own food? You can see here, biotic carbon. Respiration in animals. Here, carbon dioxide is given out. When human beings also respire, carbon dioxide is given out. Then carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. How? Through the abiotic processes like burning of your fossil fuels and wood, forest fires, volcanic activity, etc. Oxygen is released in the atmosphere by the biotic process of photosynthesis and carbon dioxide through the respiration. Now these plants, if you see, the kingdom Plantae or plants, they convert carbon dioxide into carbohydrates. By which process? By the process of photosynthesis. You all know it is a very important process in plants by which they trap the solar energy and prepare their own food, and they produce the carbon compounds like proteins and fats. Herbivores, if you see, they feed upon these plants. Look at the steps. The first one, plants. They are preparing the food by the process of photosynthesis. Herbivores are feeding upon plants. Carnivores, they feed upon herbivores, and in this way what happens? The biotic carbon. You can see the example here in this diagram. The biotic carbon is transported from plants to herbivores, from herbivores to carnivores, and from the carnivores to the apex carnivores. What happens after they die? After their death, all the types of consumers, they are decomposed by the decomposers like bacteria and fungi, and carbon dioxide is released again into the atmosphere and is used again by living organisms. Now you can come to know why the name, the carbon cycle. Why cycle? Because this carbon which is taken up by the herbivores from the autotrophs, after it is passed on to the carnivores, to the apex carnivores, after their death, again the decomposers, they decompose the dead bodies of living organisms, and this carbon is again, you can see, it is released into the atmosphere and again used up by living organisms. In this way, if you see, the carbon is continuously passed on from one living organism to other, and after the death of living organisms, the atmosphere is taken up again by living organisms, and thus carbon goes to the atmosphere, taken up by living organisms, and this cycle continues for generations and generations, and hence it is known as the carbon cycle. Why carbon cycle? Because involvement of carbon. Next is about the oxygen cycle. Now the equilibrium, the balance of the oxygen and carbon dioxide gases in the atmosphere, it is maintained only and only by the green plants, because only the green plants are the living organisms which give oxygen. Now you have heard in the pandemic, oxygen cylinders you have to purchase. You have to give the money for the oxygen cylinders, which you can get in free if you are planting more amount of trees, because they are the richest source of providing oxygen to us, and hence it is always said plant more trees, because they are the only ones who help in maintaining the equilibrium of oxygen and carbon dioxide gases in the atmosphere. Now we move towards the next biogeochemical cycle, that is the oxygen cycle. If you have just studied, oxygen forms 21% of the atmosphere. It is present also in the hydrosphere and lithosphere. And the circulation and recycling of oxygen within the biosphere is called the oxygen cycle. Now this oxygen cycle, it includes both the living and the non-living, that is biotic and abiotic components. It is continuously produced as well as used up in the atmosphere. This oxygen is continuously produced. Who is producing oxygen? It is nothing but the green plants. Here you can see plants, they absorb the carbon dioxide from the air and produce the food material and also give out oxygen. Animals breathing in oxygen. Animals give out what? Carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is taken in by the plant. So this is the cycle. Oxygen is very highly reactive and it readily reacts with other elements and compounds. And as you can see, oxygen is found in various forms like molecular oxygen, that is O2, in water, that is H2O, carbon dioxide, CO2, inorganic compounds, etc. The oxygen cycle, if you see, of the nature is really extremely complex. Now, in which processes this oxygen is released and used up? Oxygen is released, given out only and only in the process of photosynthesis, whereas it is used up in different processes like respiration by all living organisms, combustion, that is burning, decomposition, corrosion, you know how iron articles and all they corrode during the rainy season, rusting, etc. Means if you see here that oxygen is required in more processes, it is used up in more processes, but it is given only and only in one process, that is photosynthesis, and hence the planting of trees is the need of the hour. Most microorganisms, if you have seen, we have studied about in chapter number 8, useful and harmful microbes. Most microorganisms, they use the oxygen for respiration, and such microbes are called as aerobes, whereas microbes which do not need oxygen, they are called as anaerobes, means anaerobic, absence of oxygen. So if you want the balance of this oxygen cycle to be maintained in the nature, planting of the green trees is a must. And the last cycle of the nature is the nitrogen cycle. The nitrogen is the one which forms about 78%, that is the maximum portion of the atmosphere, and it is really necessary for the maintenance of the cycle, this nitrogen cycle in nature. Then what is this nitrogen cycle? The circulation and recycling of nitrogen gas into the form of different compounds through various biotic and abiotic processes in nature is called the nitrogen cycle. Now all the organisms, they participate in the nitrogen cycle, and it is an important component. This nitrogen is an important component of proteins and the nucleic acids present in the living organisms. As compared, if you compare with other elements, this nitrogen is inactive and does not easily combine with other elements. Hence, most of the organisms, they cannot use the free form of nitrogen. So let us see the important processes of this nitrogen cycle. The first is the nitrogen fixation. You have studied about it in more detail in chapter number 8, the rhizobium, which are known as nitrogen fixation bacteria, how they produce the nitrogenous compounds from the atmospheric nitrogen. So the conversion of nitrogen into nitrates and nitrites through the atmospheric, industrial and biological processes is called nitrogen fixation. Next is ammonification, that is release of ammonia through decomposition of dead bodies and excretory wastes of organisms. Nitrification is nothing but conversion of this ammonia, that is NH3, into a nitrite and then a nitrate, and final process is denitrification, conversion of nitrogen compounds into gaseous nitrogen and incorporated again in the ecosystem. So herewith we complete the revision of both the chapters for section B. Now it's your time. As I have told you, you have to read each and every chapter thoroughly if you have to get full marks in your first online assessment, because any example can be taken. You have to find out which division they belong to, or any of the process will be given to you. You have to identify from which cycle it is. So for that, reading of the textbook at least twice before your online assessment is necessary. See to it that your notebooks are completed, because after the online assessment, any day previously I will tell you, and any child I will pick up and tell you to show the notebooks. If your notebooks will not be completed, you will tend to lose your marks ahead. So see to it that it is kept complete. Next is about the Mondays. You can say Monday, the practical which was put up, the laws of motion. See to it that that practical is also completed in the journal. After the online assessment, I am going to take the next practical from section B. Before that, I will inform you through the video. So best of luck for your preparation for first online assessment for the section B subject. Tomorrow we are going to revise both the chapters for section A. So kindly read both the chapters, that is chapter number 1 and 2, before attending the tomorrow's session. Thank you, dear children.